Hey, everybody, we're going to pick up our conversation we started last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to that episode, and then you can listen to this episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learn to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday.
I think you got to give value first, especially when you don't have a reputation. They got to trust you, right? I mean, honestly, business is all about trust. And if you can't build trust with your customers, then you have no business. Trust is everything.
So how are you funding this stuff? I mean, did you save up a lot of money like when you were at the crypto place, and then you could take like time off? Like, how come you didn't have to have a job? You live in an expensive city.
Yeah. So I had savings from that crypto job, and I went right into it.
You paid all in Ripple?
At one point, I was paid in XRP. Yeah. So I had some savings that I could live off of. But what's funny is a lot of people say, don't quit your day job. Do build something on the side for a while and then quit. And I guess in a way I did that, in New York, right? With my, iPhone app and whatnot. But I think it's really empowering if you save up some money and then go all in, because there's no real plan B. And that really, the first 6 months after I started the company was it's 24 hours, and it really drove me into such a deep, almost like a spiritual level within myself. And that drove me to places where it wouldn't be where it is today without that kind of dedication and just persistence. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost that pressure, it's like we need that pressure in order for us to really reach our full potential. It's like you need that, okay, if I don't obsess about this, it's not going to happen. And sometimes, you need to obsess over something in order to be great at it, and if you're never put in a situation to where you're just, having to figure something out because rent's due and I got to go to the grocery store. And so it's like, okay, what do I have to do to make this work and figure this out? I think it almost unlocks another level of creativity too, like in your brain, when trying to achieve something.
I totally agree with that. It really, when you have constraints, that sets off something in your brain that, it tells your brain hey, this is my timeline, or this is my constraint, make it happen. Right. And then somehow in your brain, it calculates a path for you to get to where you need to. And you don't even know it's happening. It's, it's just there. And your subconscious is working it out, and then it calibrates, and then it it tells you what to do and where to go, and you just give it your all, and it usually turns out the way you want. So yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I love that. Yeah, my company, we use time boxing a lot. We do a thing where we do a web design in a day. So it's funny how if you have a week to design something, you'll probably take a week. But if you only have a day, you're going to figure out ways to make that more efficient. You're going to have code snippets ready. You're going to have a template to start with. You're going to have all these things around it. You're going to gather stuff from your client ahead of time better. So once you have some of that stuff, it makes you be creative, and it just helps a lot more efficiency occur, in situations like that. And I love the idea of what you're saying is it's almost not quite burn the bridges, but burn the bridge and just be all right, here we go, or burn the boats or whatever. All right, this is what I got to do now, and I think that really puts you in a good spot to achieve something you couldn't otherwise.
Yeah, I I mean, it is stressful. Like I won't, I can't admit that it was a stressful 6 months, but I feel like you got to be a little uncomfortable to achieve big things. And if you're comfortable all the time, then you're not gonna, get out and do much, right? So you really need to get out of your comfort zone and push yourself. And that's like a thing that I always remind myself, like, if I'm doing this, what makes me uncomfortable? Then if it makes me uncomfortable, like that's a good sign. Like it's not a bad thing. And so you always want to be, improving yourself in some capacity. Like I have things that I want to improve on right now. And, when there's things that are, I really don't want to do that. But then I ask, is it fear driven? If it's fear driven, then go ahead and do it, because that's not gonna, it's keeping me back. So
that's good.
So over that 6 months, you were just kind of grinding and posting on Instagram and following, people and kind of communicating with the community. When did you kind of see like, oh, this is going to work?
Well, it's always a grind, right? So feedback loops are really important from customers. So each week we have a new drop, which is all the gear that we get from that week. And we always look at what sold, what didn't sell, how can we improve? And then so week by week, we improve just slightly, just catering it towards what our customers want. And so those give you signals. Like early days, the signals are very small and they may be completely off in the beginning, like, selling things from Amazon. But over time, the signals get stronger and stronger. And then, a few of the products will hit home and you'll be like, wow, like people really love this. Okay, so how can I replicate this? And so, yeah, that's kind of, really important to have great feedback loops with your customers directly.
Yeah, that makes sense. When the sales kind of started happening, how long were you like kind of a one-man band? And like at what point did you start bringing people in to help you?
This is a really good question. So I found myself struggling right around the $1 million mark, so annual revenue. And so this is about $80,000 a month. And I just could not get over this hump. And I don't know, like, if it's like a mental thing, like that $1 million number or what, but it just, like, I just couldn't push through. And this is when I was a solopreneur, I was just by myself. The lifestyle was great. Actually, my wife and I traveled to Europe, went to the Amalfi Coast in Italy and all that. And like, I could just work from my laptop as a solopreneur. But
yeah, you're making good money, right? It's like, it's good enough to pay your bills and have some enjoyable times in life, and not too much stress.
Exactly.
Just enough.
Just enough. Yeah. So, I was doing that for a while, but then I don't know, for me, the lack of growth is, it just was nagging at me. And I don't know if other people are just happy, just kind of like cruising and they're enjoying their solopreneur lifestyle. But for me, I always need to see progress. And so it just really was nagging at me. And I was like, oh man, like how do I get past this like hurdle, this $1 million hurdle? And it finally clicked where it was like, all right, like I need to start hiring and delegating some of these things, right? So that's when I started bringing in contractors first for very specific tasks. So this would be, things like product photography. Like I was taking photos for the website and it was so inefficient because literally like I had to wait. I had a 2-hour window between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. each day where the natural light would hit the coffee table like just right. And then I would take all my photos and it was just like ridiculous, right? But yeah, so I hired, a product photographer and he's so much better at it than I am. And he's so much faster. And so, that's a very specific thing that I offloaded. And then slowly one by one, I offloaded more and more things and we started hiring full-time employees. And it just kind of grew from there. But I think the important thing is that I've learned is to really grow a business. I actually have this, use this framework called the I, we, they framework. And so when you first start out, you're the one doing everything. It's like your baby, right? But then eventually you get people on board and you're kind of like peers in a way where you're doing everything together to figure out the processes and systems so that, they can also do it alongside with you. And then the last one, they just run with it, and you're, I guess, managing the process, but you don't have to be involved in the day-to-day activity of that specific task. And so kind of utilizing that framework, you're able to level up and, make use of your time in more effective ways where, your time is so valuable. But if you're doing something like, I don't know, like answering customer support emails yourself, I mean, those are important in the very beginning, don't get me wrong. But, you can't just live in your inbox and grow a business, right? So, so I think hiring very strategically over time is really important for growing.
Mm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'd never heard the I, we, they framework. That's a great thing to think about as you're training new people and handing stuff off to them.
So what are some of the hurdles that you started to have to overcome once you started hiring people? In the very beginning, did you just hire friends and family members, or did you like put a post out on Craigslist or, Facebook and try to get, people to apply, or what was that like?
Yeah. So I just put up a posting on the website of Urban EDC, and we essentially sourced from our own community of enthusiasts and customers. And you'd be surprised how many people are, they want to help. And there's a lot of them are very qualified too. And we really wanted to come from this as like a passion, like make sure first of all, you got to know your gear, like all this gear terminology, like you really have to know your stuff. And then you got to be passionate about what you're doing. And so, we sourced our first hires from the community. And then as we grew and needed very specific areas, like, let's say like, marketing or whatever, right? It's something very like tactical and strategic. Then we can get agencies or just hire someone who's only doing that. And so that way, because it's so specialized, I feel like it's better to get a specialist for that versus sourcing from our community. But generally for, for kind of the more of the cultural thing, like customer support, even, I feel like you got to understand the lingo, you got to understand the culture of the community to really empathize with customers and be able to speak their language. That's really important. So
what, how large was the team?
Yeah.
At its peak.
So right now the team's about, so for Urban EDC, team is about 10. Urban EDC is about 10. And then GrowthJet, which is the other company, that is about 15 to 20, because we have a lot of warehouse associates. And so those kind of come and go depending on demand and seasonality. But yeah, around there.
And so are you kind of like CEO of both those companies?
Yeah.
And then did you have to hire somebody to kind of be like right below you to kind of manage both those companies, but then you're still involved? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So it's really important to have a great kind of like a general manager. So I have a general manager now for Urban EDC. And for GrowthJet, we have somebody that is eventually going to be GM, but he's relatively new, so he's still getting up and running. But yeah, he's pretty strong. So yeah, that's kind of how we're thinking about this: is have a very strong GM who oversees the operations and kind of runs each side of the business. And I have a P&L that I run each month, and so everybody can see what the P&L is. And so the GM knows exactly what they need to do to cut costs or increase revenue or whatever. And so it's a very transparent organization in that respect. And I think that with transparency, they kind of manage, the GMs know the numbers and they know which levers to pull within the company. So yeah, that's been working out.
Right.
That's really cool. Yeah. So it makes it super clear. They don't need to really question too much, or you don't need to micromanage. Like, you kind of know what levers you can pull and we need to get the numbers to here, or, okay, we're a little off track. Let's make some adjustments. That's cool.
Did you hire that person or did you promote that person from within?
It's what I found is that it's really hard to bring someone from the outside at such a high position because you have people that are working and they've been working for you for a while and they feel like they feel a little bit, it's not like disrespected, but they just feel disappointed, right? And so it's best that I found to work with your team and then evaluate their skills, and then eventually they can elevate to a higher position within the company. And so that's kind of what I've done, with each company is just look at the skill sets of each employee. And then if you see like a talent that's like, oh, this person's really strong and I see potential, then you want to develop that skill set and kind of like let them in a little bit more. Like, hey, here's the P&L. Like, what do you think? How should we, go about improving it? And then if they have really good ideas and they can execute on it, that's a really good signal. Like, hey, this guy, this person has something. Let's cultivate this a little more. So, yeah.
So with Urban EDC, did you kind of reach that pinnacle to where you're like, okay, I made it, quote unquote. Now what do I do? And then like you kind of got bored. I mean, it seems like to me, it's like you always want to be moving forward. So you kind of did everything you kind of dreamed about doing with the EDC. And then is that when you decided like, oh, I'm going to start this growth jet company? Like,
yeah,
what was going through your mind during that?
So it's an interesting observation. So I found that I get bored every maybe 3 years or so. And I don't know what it is.
You're speaking Ben's language right now.
So Ben, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Only it's I definitely Mark knows what. Yeah, I do get bored of things like, oh, I'm good at starting things and getting them rolling, but I'm not like a maintenance guy. I'm like, okay, well, that was fun. Somebody else want to do this now, or I want to go do something else. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So I mean, Urban EDC is still going, and we have new ideas and like new initiatives that we're launching, but it's not as exciting for me personally, just because the systems are in place. And for me, it's now about training and like kind of like delegating leadership and decision making to my team. And then at the same time, I can start something else from scratch and work on that and grow that thing. And then eventually, the I, We, They framework, I can get other people to join and then do the same thing there. And so I just found that, I guess that part is really exciting for me, is just the early phases and getting to a point where the systems are in place. And then I can start mentoring other entrepreneurs essentially to elevate into the company leadership. So yeah, that's kind of it's like a cycle. Every 3 years I go through this weird phase where I'm like, all right, it's time, it's time. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. How long was Urban EDC around before you started Growth Jet?
Yeah, Urban EDC started in October 2015. So, and then Growth Jet started early 2019. So around January 2019. And Growth Jet's an interesting story because we weren't even planning on having that business, but a lot of colleagues were asking us about fulfillment, and they were having issues with fulfillment themselves. And they started just asking us, hey, can you just help out with our fulfillment? We'll pay you. And so we started doing that. So we had like 2-3 clients before we even had a website or a name. So we were getting paid for a service and with no brand equity. And eventually, obviously, we created a website and now have an actual company name and all that. But that one just kind of came to us like so naturally without even us really trying much. But yeah.
You kind of solved a problem for yourselves, and other people are like, hey, can you help me with that?
Yeah, exactly. And that one was a little bit not as, that one just came to us really fast. So I didn't need to, I guess the demand was already tested. by people coming to us versus like Urban EDC. I had to, do the whole Amazon thing to test demand. But yeah.
So what's next?
What's next?
I mean, what do you see as like, have you learned a lot about yourself in, these past several years to, kind of know like how to, I would say almost like have bumpers in your life, to kind of keep you going straight and not going off the rails. You're married. Do you have any kids?
No kids yet.
Okay. And so, you have a family that you're looking out for and whatnot. So, how do you stay motivated and, what gets you up every day?
Yeah. So I started a new podcast. It's called First Class Founders. And this is right around 3 years after Growth Jet. Now I'm kind of shifting my focus to empowering and working with other entrepreneurs. And I've seen a lot of things. I've made a lot of mistakes myself doing all this. And I just feel like I can help. If I just help like one other person out there, then, I would be really happy with that. And so I created this podcast as a learning tool for anyone else who either wants to start a business or they already have one, but they're having, they're not growing or, they're having issues with, whatever it is, right? Like they don't know how to hire properly or whatever. So I created this podcast for entrepreneurs who are just, ambitious and wanting to grow. So that's the next phase of, I guess, my journey is education for others and hopefully like help them out in some capacity in the future.
That's awesome. Check it out. Yeah. firstclassfounders.com. Looks great. I'll check this out.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, this has been, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I always get some sort of nugget from every person that we talk to on the show. And, I feel like we learned a lot from you today. So thanks so much for coming on the show and just kind of sharing your journey with us and just a little bit of, kind of behind the scenes of, what it's taken to grow a business, maintain a business and, keep moving forward. So typically we have Ben distill everything that we've learned this episode down to a handful of takeaways. So Ben, what do you got for us today?
All right. I got some really good ones here. One thing you said that I thought was really wise, I'm going to do myself, is just reflect and see what you're spending your time and your money on, because it's probably what you're passionate about. Mark, you said this one part of the conversation. Am I allowed to use you, Mark, too? We've never done this.
Course,
I've never pulled a quote from you before. Why have I not done this?
I'm an idiot. That's why.
No, you said pressure can help you reach your full potential, which I thought was a really good way of distilling what we were talking about. Also, you said figure out a way to test your market instead of overinvesting in the beginning. That was a great takeaway, just showing like how you didn't overinvest and stuff like that. And my favorite thing you said was you have to be uncomfortable to achieve big things. So that was really something I will be thinking a lot about. And you also said just keep moving, which I think is the theme of this episode. Just keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
So Yong-Soo, if you could leave our audience with one advice, say someone wants to get into the e-commerce space or start their own business or grow their business, what is one thing that you might tell a young entrepreneur or someone just starting out to start doing next week right away?
Yeah, I think it's really important to just find something that you're passionate about and just start, because I feel like too many of us are just on the sidelines, like wishing that they would get started one day, but then that one day never comes, or you have some other priorities that pop up in your life. And once you get started, that at least gets you going, and then you can kind of evaluate yourself, and you really learn a lot from just taking that first action. And so I encourage everyone to take that first step and stay consistent with what you're doing for 6-12 months. You find out a lot about yourself by doing that.
That's awesome. That's great. I love that advice. If somebody wanted to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Yep. So I'm on Twitter at Yong-Soo Chung, and you can also find my podcast at firstclassfounders.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And also check out urbanedcsupply.com because there's some really, really nice stuff on there. Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show. And you can go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for our episode. And you can find links to our websites there and ways to get in touch with us. At the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will help you set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business.
That's right. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in the Apple Podcast app. And if you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover, don't forget to record a quick voice memo and send it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
Thanks for listening, guys. And until next time,
live every day like it's Friday.